Hello, my name is John, and I'm a nerd, and I have been for a while. And today I'm going to talk about the Zack Snyder Justice League cut, which I finally got a chance to watch in its entirety, twice in fact, and thoroughly enjoyed. And there's just a couple of things I want to mention about it. First, a couple of things I didn't like as well, and then the things that I did like. And I'm going to try and do this without too many spoilers, because not everybody has HBO Max. Although, I guess a lot of people watched it the other day. It seemed to have gotten quite a bit of attention from the watchers online. So first of all, a couple of things that I can't say I didn't like, but kind of missed. In the original Justice League, the theatrical, I should say, not the original, but the theatrical release of Justice League, you got a very quick introduction to Batman very early in the movie, and you got to see him in Gotham and capturing a thug. And yeah, it was a little silly. It was a little cheesy. But it was kind of nice to actually see him in that environment. Whereas in the Snyder release, there's really not much of Batman in Gotham, other than at his new Batcave and his residence. So I did kind of miss that little bit of a setting in Gotham. Not a big deal. But I kind of liked having that introduction very early in, so you knew who this Batman was and how he worked. I did enjoy Ben Affleck as Batman. I liked his performance. He was fine. Best Batman ever? Not sure, but not terrible. Another thing that I missed was the Wonder Woman theme. I don't know what the story with this was, and I'm not a huge fan of Zack Snyder's choices for music in a lot of his movies, just not my style. But one thing I really did miss, that heavy electric guitar riff. I kind of missed that. That was one thing I think would have really put some punctuation on Wonder Woman's scenes. Now, she had some great scenes in this movie, and she's nothing like the character that appeared in the forgettable Wonder Woman 84. Forgettable, and I'm trying to forget it desperately. I did watch it. I wouldn't bother if I were you. As far as Zack Snyder's cut, though, overall, I really, really enjoyed it. One of the things that I deeply enjoyed was how this film actually, it's 4 hours, so he's got the time, but he takes the time to introduce you to the characters in a way that they make sense. And the elements of the story that come into play, that end up bringing these characters together, makes sense. For instance, in the Justice League theatrical release, there's no explanation as to why Steppenwolf has his I mean, there's a slight explanation in that it's a place without internet, so it's off the grid. But why this crazy Chernobyl-like place, and why is there a family there? Well, those are issues that are addressed in this movie, and you'll find that that family isn't even an issue. So I guess that's a bit of a spoiler there, but nothing big. But the logic and the flow of this movie is much better. There are times where I think it takes itself just a little too seriously, and because there was a couple of times where I felt like I was almost watching Lord of the Rings. In one scene, a group of people break out in song, which seemed a little out of place, and I think probably that really didn't need to be there. If I'd understood what they were singing, maybe, if there was subtitles, maybe I would have understood it, but since it was a language I don't speak or understand, it really didn't mean anything to me. Maybe it's some great traditional song that meant something to whoever was from there. But I didn't get it. But now, as I said, I like the fact that Snyder took his time to let you learn about the characters and bring them into the story in an understandable way. And that's something that a lot of modern movies really, really miss. I obviously grew up watching movies in the 70s and into the 80s, was my childhood. And the movies I was used to then were at a much slower pace, and they took time to build the tension and build the environment in which your story takes place, or those stories took place. And a lot of movies nowadays, they're so MTV, cut, bounce here, bounce there. Did that make sense? Who cares? Let's move on to the rest of the story. It's hurt storytelling in the long run, and I'm hoping that we're going to start getting back into that. Now, as far as the different characters that were involved, I would have been nice to have had Green Lantern. He was in the comic books. He was an original Justice League member, founding member. So him not being in it, it's a little bit disappointing, but not surprising because of the problems they've been having with that character and getting the movie to work with it. It was interesting. Spoiler alert. Martian Manhunter does make an appearance in the movie. He's not terribly important to it. He does have one little kind of significant scene, but he's not a big part of the action. He's just basically brought into the story to introduce him as a potential player in the future. Another thing I wanted to mention were the performances. Ray Fisher as Cyborg did very well, and it's interesting to see what is in this movie, and might explain a little bit of why he had such a difficulty with the director, because it seems like almost 50% or more, probably more like 60 or 70% of his performance from the film was cut from the theatrical release. His story was barely even there in the theatrical release. He was a good character, and I wanted to know more about him, but the scenes didn't flow and did not make sense with him. And in the new Justice League, Zack Snyder version, it makes a lot of sense. All of the characters do. And the one, I'm not a big fan of this Barry Allen. I thought Ezra Fisher is a fine actor, just not a fan of the direction. I hope the movie doesn't make him quite as goofy, because he's just basically a slapstick character. Overall, he has a couple of good moments, But overall, he's just kind of comic relief. Henry Cavill's always good as Superman. I actually didn't like him in the previous two movies. I was not very happy with his performance. But in this, I thought he did really, really well. I was pleasantly surprised. Of course, I wasn't expecting much, but I got a good performance, and I appreciate that. Gal Gadot is always great. Even in Wonder Woman 84, she was the best part of it. She did what she could. There was no saving that movie, but she did what she could. And who am I leaving out? Anyone? Oh, yeah, of course, Aquaman. Love the Aquaman movie. Some of the scenes in Atlantis, the underwater talking scenes were a departure, and the colorfulness was missing that you saw in the Aquaman movie. The underwater scenes were much drabber and duller. It's kind of interesting to see it stick to that. But overall, my rating for this movie would probably be about an 8 out of 10. Because it was such a strong story, well told. It dragged a little bit in a few places, but then he had the 4 hours to work with, so why not? It was interesting character exposition. So if you get a chance to see it, I recommend it.